And joining us now, one of my favorite human beings on the planet, no doubt about it, mine and yours as well. Because if you know anything about this guy, you know that you cannot have a bad thing to say about him. This is a man who has been up and down the road. This is a man who, when you think of characters and you think of things like ECW, WWE, and even professional wrestling, uh, if this guy does not come to the top of your list, you're missing out on something and you need to do more homework. Ladies and gentlemen, joining me now, the Blue Meanie, Brian Heffron. Brian, how you doing today, pal?
Hey, what's up, Tid, man? Thanks for that really nice intro. The PayPal's on its way, or Venmo, or whichever form of currency you take. I
Well,
will
we're
send it. I'll send it in US funds.
yeah, we're of the old school, so you can just throw a check in the mail.
I'll give you the handshake through the give it a handshake through the camera.
That's right. That's right. How old will that hot dog be by the time it gets there?
Uh I'll hold the toppings.
So let's get down to this because you're busy. And I want to get as much information out of you as possible.
Yeah.
Let's start. Blue
Yes, sir.
Meanie is probably, in my opinion, one of the greatest characters of all time in wrestling. There's
I
no doubt
appreciate
about it.
that.
Um, when this all came about and the Blue Meanie concept all came about, how open were you to it? How did it come about? You know what I mean? Who brought it to your attention first? And was there hesitation?
The Blue Meanie character came about. I was in the business for about a year and a half. There was a series of shows I did once I left Al Snow's wrestling gym in Lima, Ohio. Al Snow's Body Slammers wrestling gym in Lima, Ohio, to go back east. I kept running it. There's three shows, one in Baltimore, West Virginia, and then Pittsburgh. I kept running into Raven and Stevie Richards. And one after one of the shows, Raven pitched the idea that they were thinking about doing Stevie Richards was Raven's lackey, and they wanted to have a lackey for a lackey, but kind of like a wacky kind of guy where he's a fat guy who like tries to emulate Stevie, so he's wearing the half shirt and the Daisy Dukes.
Mhm.
And they had a guy in mind, and the guy made me look small, if you can imagine that. He towered over me, big dude, but he wasn't a worker. He couldn't wrestle, couldn't take bumps. Raven watched me work over those three shows and saw me do some stuff, saw me do the moonsault. And he, the day after the Pittsburgh show, he pitched me the idea of being Stevie's lackey. So I kind of debuted October of 1994, but there was an incident with fire on the show, which all that footage got canned. So along with it came my debut. So in that meantime, Raven and Steve were doing shows, and um, in the meantime, we're driving back from one of those shows, and Raven goes, hey, have you ever seen Yellow Submarine? I was like, yeah, when I was a kid. He's like, you remember the character Blue Meanie? I was like, vaguely, sort of, kind of. He's like, you're going to be the Blue Meanie. Uh, you're gonna, he's trying to pitch it hard to me. He's like, you're gonna
Sure.
love it. You're gonna want to paint your whole body blue, but just do your hair for now. I was like, Bob, I'll be in ECW, right? He's like, yeah. I was like, I'm in. You don't have to sell me. And then November to Remember '95, we went out and got the half shirts. We got the Daisy Dukes, and my debut was to present Stevie Richards with a present. So at November to Remember '95, they had me sit in the crowd with the rest of the audience. And when Stevie came out, I jumped to my feet and got his attention. I handed him a package, and when he opened up, it was a airbrush half shirt that said "Flock of Seagulls" with a bunch of hearts and all that stuff. And we embraced, and he brought me over to guardrail. And in a lot of ways, that was very symbolic, because I used to go to those DCW shows as a fan.
Right.
And now I'm a professional wrestler, and I'm being brought over to guardrail into a company, and my life's about to change forever, you know?
Did you think at any point, like, because Ravens, we both know Raven, and
Hmm.
his brain is like on 12.
Yes.
at all times. You know what I mean? Did you ever think that this was a rib?
Uh, kind of, sort of, but
Yeah.
and you asked me about hesitation. There was a little bit of hesitation at first because you get in the. I was only in the business again. I was only in the business a year and a half. I started in June of '94, maybe, and first match in Canada, by the way. Um, but yeah, you're thinking, all right, this guy's set me up, half shirt, Daisy Dukes, dye my hair blue. It could be a rib. And a lot the comparison I use, I'm in the back getting dressed, and I kind of feel like Howard Stern in the movie Private Parts when you see him dressed as Fart Man, and he's walking through the backstage at MTV Music Awards, and everybody's just looking at him like, "Who's this?" And Ozzy goes, "What a jerk," because has his ass hanging out. But it's one of those things, you take risks.
You lean into it.
No risk it, no biscuit.
Right? Yeah. Yeah.
It's, think of Dusty with the polka dots. Even if
Right.
it was a rib, he's like, I'm going to make this work.
Right. Right.
And being a natural class clown, everything I got in trouble for in grade school, I started making money with. My report card would come home from school. Brian keeps making fart noises in class. Well, now I'm on ECW doing the armpit. So, I mean, it could have been a rib, but if it was, it paid off. There's certain things. Sometimes you have to step outside of your comfort zone.
So inside of the business, and I can remember having a conversation with Pat Tanaka one time,
Mm-hmm.
and we were talking about ribs inside of the business. He's telling me about AWA stuff, and padlocking, the boss's briefcase to the table, and like, and guys would come in, just with like missing eyebrows, and some ribs back in the day were a little fucking excessive,
A little
like
stiff.
H bombing dudes on planes and stuff like
Yeah.
that. Seems, you know what I mean? I mean,
Yeah.
that's the equivalency of like, date rape nowadays, it seems like. And
Yeah.
it's insanity, some of the stuff that these guys would get away with. What was the biggest and best or worst rib that you ever witnessed yourself or were a part of that you're ready to now confess to?
Wow. Biggest rib. Probably I don't know if there's any like huge ribs.
Right.
Uh you know, yeah, I was always about the harmless ribs. So like for instance, me and Al Snow,
Mhm.
my big brother, we're traveling on WWE, and we're in somewhere in Connecticut, and we do the show. Probably, I think this is when Raw was taped live Monday, taped Tuesday, go home on Wednesday. So we go to the hotel, and we go to our rooms. I'm going to take a shuttle bus in the morning. He's going to return to rental car, and I realized I had left my knee pads in the car. I put them in the back seat just to kind of air out, because I don't want to put them in my bag and they get the whole bag gross. So I was letting my knee pads air out in the back seat. So I call up Al's room. Hey Al, I left my knee pads in the car. Can I come get the key? Go get my knee pads. It's like, yeah. So I go down to his room, get the key, go down to the car, go to the rental car, unlock it, go in. I'm grabbing my knee pads out of the back seat, and I go, and I was alerted. I reminded myself of a rib I used to pull when I worked as a security guard in the casinos in Atlantic City. If I ever saw somebody who left their car window down, I would just reach into the car and turn the volume knob on the radio all the way up. It was a harmless rib. I'm not stealing change out of the
Right.
out of the cup holder or nothing. I'm just hey, you probably should have rolled up your window. It was a gentle reminder. You should have rolled up your window. But here I am. I'm getting my knee pads. I look over, and I go over and reach over to the stereo and turn the volume knob all the way up and leave it. Go back, give out the keys, go back to my room. And this is back in the day, early days of cell phones, where you went to bed, you actually turn your cell phone off. So I turn my cell phone off, go to bed, get the wake up call from the hotel. Wake up, the hotel wakes me up, get on the shuttle bus, going to the airport. I go, shit, let me turn my phone on. Turn my phone on. Oh, I got a message. I call the voicemail, and all you hear is music blaring. And Al goes, Meanie, son of a bitch. Yeah, and a few other words. And he just cursed me out. But not only was the rib funny, but the fact was he turned on the car. He was startled to death by loud music. He didn't even bother turning it down. He
No,
just grabbed his phone, dialed my number, called me, cursed me out, hung up, and then probably turned down the music afterward.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
so that
Half the part of selling the rib is letting you know that, all right, you got me.
you got
You
me.
got me. Did he ever receipt you on it?
Oh, no, Al never really. I can't remember a time Al really ribbed me.
Right.
We've always ribbed other people. Where I was out of school and we're talking about blading and gigging and all that stuff. And uh, one day I go into the restroom area. Everybody's for training or whatever, and I gig my forehead just for the fuck of it. And then I slam something hard, really hard on the ground. And I lay on the ground and I'm laying there bleeding. Oh God, help. And Al's the first one in, and he sees me and you see him go because he knows what I'm fucking doing. And then the other students come in like, oh my God, you okay? Call an ambulance. And then I realized the ambulance just costs money. I was like, no, it's a rib. It's a rib. It's a rib. Yeah. I don't want to get no bill. As long as the rib doesn't involve somebody paying money, then it's a harmless rib.
Right. Well, that was always the thing too, is, you'd see guys, especially rental cars. Rental cars is just like, as soon as you're, never ever, these are the things that I've learned from other people, not myself, because I wouldn't be so silly. Never ever let somebody else return your rental car.
Right.
You know,
Right. And get the coverage.
always get the insurance coverage.
I know of a certain guy who should go nameless, but his first name's Balls and his last name's Mahoney. Um, he was lit. I don't know what the deal was, but like the headbangers like egged him on to destroy his rental car. They're like, oh, that's a rental. You wouldn't take a bump on the roof, would you? Oh, what, dude? And he goes up on top of the car. It takes a huge bump. And then he has to take the car back to the rental place. And he realizes he never got the coverage for the car. The full cover.
Wow.
So it's like he was on the hook for the damage.
Did the headbangers at least like pitch in a couple of bucks or something like that to help him out?
Of course not. Because they didn't physically touch the car. They just they
right.
coerced
The power of persuasion, as it were, right?
Which didn't take much.
Was there ever
it was enough power to light maybe like a flashlight.
Was there ever a guy in ECW that you just didn't rib? I can remember one time I'm standing backstage at an ECW show. I think it might have been Buffalo or something like that.
Okay.
And I'm standing backstage and I'm having a conversation with Tommy Rich at the time.
Hey.
and we're just shooting the shit, you know what I mean? And just having a casual conversation and gang, one man gang comes, walking by or whatever, and Tommy fucking says something to him without missing a beat. One man gang reaches into his pocket, pulls out a fucking knife, looks at Tommy and goes, I'll fucking cut your fucking throat right in front of this kid. And I'm just going, whoa, what the hell's going on? Like, clearly they're just busting each other's balls at the time, right? But it's,
of course,
it's one of those things. Like, is there ever anybody that you were just like, you don't go near him to rib him? And why was his name New Jack?
Hey, amazingly enough, me and New Jack got along great.
I have nothing but nice things to say about New Jack. I never had any problems with him. I worked with him, many times. I would work with Jack 8 days a week. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? There was that first initial time when you meet him, and you're sitting
The,
in the
the
locker
feeling
room.
out process.
Yeah, because you're sitting in the locker room and and he's gotten across the border and he reaches into his bag and he pulls out this like 10-inch long knife that's connected to a chain and it's got a fork at the other end and you're going, okay, this could go one of two ways. Right, one of two ways. And I says to my one of my tag partners at the time, I was like, hand me the fucking dusters. So he hands me a pair of knuckles and I put them in my
Hmm.
pocket. Just, because if this is going to go one way, this is going to go one way very badly. And
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
right, we go out there, we're talking, we go out there, we do the thing. The first fucking spot comes off. We go to the outside. Jack grabs a bottle, smashes the bottle, uses the end of the bottle and starts, digging into my forehead or whatever. And I've got my hand ready to go into my pocket. Like if this is going to go south, this is where it's going to go south. And light as a fucking feather. Like
Yes.
could not possibly be more professional
Yeah.
at that moment. And it was at that moment that I was like, cool, I will work with this guy anytime, anytime,
I wasn't in ECW when ECW ran Canada, but I think I was in there like right after, and I heard the story that they're at the they're at the building in Canada the first night. I forget, I don't know where it was, but New Jack walks into the building and everybody's jaw hit the floor. Like, how did he get into Canada?
right.
And they're like, Jack, how did you get into Canada? And Jack looks at him and goes, man, that water was cold. As if he swam across the border, which is amazing. Huge pop, you know. But
Yeah.
I had similar situations. I worked with New Jack a couple times in the once in the ECW arena, and then when I came back in 2000, we had a match, and easy as cake. Yeah, easy. It's all in how you approach people. You're asking, who do you, don't rib. It's just, there's you could rib somebody, but you gotta get to know the person in order to rib them. So like, I can say something that, once me and Jack got to know each other and had a comfortability around each other, I could say things to pop them.
Mhm.
And but if an outsider came in and said the exact same thing, then there's going to be trouble, you know. But that we were like a family. Somebody just posted a clip on Twitter the other day where me and Nova, Tommy Dreamer is getting beat down by Danny Doring, Jack Victory, Mike Lazansky, and one other guy. Can't Lance Wright and one other guy. I can't think of his name. And me and Nova do the New Jack, do the Gangsters Run in with the trash can. He's Nova Stappa and I'm Blue Jack, and we're beating him up, and we're doing this because New Jack was injured, and he's not on the show, but he's at the show. And he's on top of the stage where the hard camera is, and we do the whole thing. And there's a moment where we're bringing the trash can full of weapons, and we go to throw it in. Nova goes to throw it over the top rope. I go to throw it through the ropes, and we both hit the top rope, and everything spills out. I slide in, start hit with the weapons, and we do all this stuff. And then at the end, we look up, and New Jack's at the top of the stage next to the camera, giving us the X, like the New Jack X. We start doing it back, and we get to the back of the locker room. He goes, Meanie, when you had trash can hit the top rope and all the way, I lost. I lost my. I was like, only the Blue Meanie can, fuck up like that and still get a pop. And they just think, oh, that's just Meanie. They think it was planned, But New Jack was always a Meanie advocate, and I'll always be a New Jack advocate, even though he's done some controversial things, but those things were done out of him feeling he was disrespected,
Right. Absolutely. I remember one time Jack calls me on the phone, okay, to tell me he's lost. He's literally driving around and he's lost. And he's like, you got to help me find my way out of here. And I'm like, brother, I'm in Canada and we're on the phone together. And I have no idea where the hell you are.
Yeah.
And literally I had to talk him through, we're just shooting the shit and talking so that he was like, he was in the middle of nowhere, didn't know where the fuck he was until he could find his way out of there. But that was always the kind of guy that, like, Jack always had this persona right? That was
Mhm.
larger than life. And yes, you mentioned like he had done a couple of, a few things that were less than desirable in other people's eyes or whatever, but it always came from a place where he felt like he was disrespected. But then there's the other side of a guy like that. And once you meet people like that inside of the business, I think that's where you really get a chance to understand the human that is joined into the wrestling business.
Yeah.
I want to ask you this. What was the best advice that you ever got from somebody, you know what I mean, when you first came in, when you first broke into the business?
Uh,
And
well,
don't say get out of the business, because that's what everybody's fucking good. You know what I mean?
well,
Burn
Al
your
didn't tell me to get out of
boots.
the business because I already paid him, and then he's got
Yeah.
to train me. So no, but Al always taught me, and this, if any aspiring pro wrestlers, there's two good pieces of advice. Mouth closed, ears open.
Mhm.
Always, no matter what show you're going to, always have your gear. Don't bring it in, leave it in the car. Show up, find a promoter, introduce yourself to everybody. From the promoter to the ticket taker, introduce yourself to everybody. When you find a promoter, hey, I'm Brian. I know you, I'm sure you got a full cart, but if there's a happen to be an opening, I have my stuff in the car, which got me on a lot of shows when I start wrestling on the East Coast with Dennis Corluzzo. Hey, Brian, so and so stuck in traffic. You're on third. Go get your stuff. Okay, cool. And then a key piece of advice. Um, I'll say the phrase and then I'll explain it. Save it for the car. Save it. If you're angry or you feel disrespectful or you have a grievance and you need to get off your chest, save it for the car when you're amongst the people you're traveling with. Just say it, get it off your chest, vent. And then once you say it, maybe you think something differently. But also if you say you're saying it in the locker room, and if somebody overhears it, somebody takes that and they go to the promoter and they bury it. Oh, Brian, so and so is talking shit about you in the other room, blah blah blah, this and that and the other thing. More famously, I was just thinking about this the other night. There's a famous incident where Bam Bam Bigelow wrestled Andre the Giant in Madison Square Garden, and Andre just beat the tar out of Bam Bam. And getting a chance to get to know Bam Bam in ECW, he told me, I was like, I was just talking about something with dealing with the match with Andre. I can't remember what he told me what it was, but somehow either Andre overheard it or somebody stooched it off to Andre. Hence the match in the Garden where Andre just beat him with an inch of his life. Just you keep your mouth, kid. You're new here, kid. And that's why Bam Bam went away, and when he came back, he was a much different person. He had matured a little bit, but those those key advices for any aspiring young wrestler. Uh, you know, Mouth closed, ears open. Always bring your gear. Save it for the car.
Do you
No matter.
think though? Do you think though? And the reason I say this is society has changed.
Of
Like you
course.
and I are closely around the same age. I'm not nearly as young as you are, but we were in the business. We broke into the business when those phrases were like, that's the fucking Bible.
Yeah.
Like this is key. If you do not do this, you will not go anywhere in this.
Right.
Do you think it's lost on some of these kids nowadays though?
It it could be lost, but it's up to us to reinforce it.
Right.
And there needs to be enough vets. Or there should be vets around. Even if you're running an independent show and you have a group of young guys, pay a guy to come in and hang out in the locker room just to talk to the younger guys,
Mhm.
because all the younger guys have are each other. And if they're all together, same experience level, they're all going to make the same mistakes together and not know any better. Whereas if you have like a veteran presence in the locker room, a guy who could pull somebody aside, not call somebody out in front of the locker room, pull a guy aside, like, hey man, you might not want to do that. Like either in the locker room or in the ring. Hey, this is what you did during the match. This was good, but next time maybe try this. There needs to be more veterans around the younger talent uh, veterans that you can trust to give the right advice. You know, look
Right.
at that person's track record and go, him not so much, but him. Oh, okay, yeah, have him around. You know, and there's a lot of things I learned from Al, and there's things a lot of things I learned from uh experience,
Yeah.
good and bad, that
Yeah.
I try to pass on to the next generation, and it's up to them to carry it forward. But getting back to I forget the initial question, but yeah, these things can be carried on, but it's our job to uh let them know what they're doing wrong and not, hope osmosis takes over and they just learn it through mental telepathy. We
Yeah.
have to tell them
Yeah.
these things. We have to show examples and not
And I
just let them go out there and flounder.
and I think one of the biggest things for myself that I tell a lot of our kids nowadays, and even just people breaking into business that for whatever reason ask me, is I tell them all the same thing: put on your shoes, put on your shoes, and leave your house. You absolutely 100%. Like, I can tell you stuff about what's happening around here, and I can tell you, my experience and stuff like that. But until you put on your shoes, leave your house, get on the road, and start experiencing what other places, what other territories, and what other workers and other vets in those territories and other green guys in those territories are all working, learning, and experiencing, you can't judge any kind of level of success whatsoever until you've left. You can be the biggest fish, you know what I mean, in a small pond, but as well as I do, you have to go out there and you have to put yourself in an uncomfortable position, it seems like, by
Yeah.
doing so, right? You have to be that guy who's walking into somebody else's locker room, and not as an experienced guy, not as a guy who's been hired, the marquee, not as the Blue Meanie or whatever, you know what I mean, but
Mhm.
as the green guy,
Yeah.
who's still working. Do you remember, and was there ever a time where you walked into a locker room and you just were not received whatsoever, and how did it make you feel? Did you feel like you had to go out there and prove yourself even more inside of the ring?
Um, I was fortunate that I trained with Al, and then Al got me all my initial bookings. I worked his school events. I would work for he would I would get booked for Sabu's events up in Michigan, Dan Severn's events up in Michigan, and then Al started. We started going over to he started booking me out to Indiana for Mike Samples, and every locker room I went into was always cool. But there's like maybe one instance where I felt where I not I felt where I was disrespected, and there was a show in Pittsburgh. I'm sorry, in Newcastle, Pennsylvania, which is technically
Sure.
hour north of Pittsburgh, or Norm Connors. And earlier in the show, I wrestle a guy named Tex Monroe, who is a student, one of my classmates. And we had the match, but I had a tag partner at the time named Rick Matrix, and
I
he
know
was,
Rick.
yeah, oof, had stories.
Oh yeah.
But he's married now. I can't say him out loud. Rick Matrix is in the main event against, I want to say, against another one of our classmates, Ray the Crippler Roberts, in the Newcastle Street fight. So I was instructed by the promoter to go out and be Rick's corner man, help him cheat a little bit or with us. So the crowd's rowdy. It's ruckus. There's no barricade. So like the fans are like right on top of you. So this local indie guy takes it upon himself to go out there and kind of be security for the event and hold, but like I'm trying to do my thing as a wrestler and trying to cheat to get heat on the babyface Ray Roberts to help Rick Matrix. This guy takes it upon himself to grab me and like throw punches. I was like, what are you doing? This, that, and the other thing. So we get back to the locker room and I tried to be a cool guy. I tried to be a cool customer, but I got in the locker room and I was like, what the fuck was your what, who told you to be? I picked up picked up a steel trash can and launched it across the locker room, and he just grabbed his stuff and left. I was like, what was he thinking? You know, hey, who told you to be out there? And why, even if you're the local baby face, why would you put yourself out there to where you're going to have to interject yourself into the match? Nobody told you to be out there. No, and that's the one of the few times like in my career where I didn't feel uncomfortable. I felt like super disrespected and stuff
Right.
like that. I mean, and that was early on. And then, and the promoter, Norm Connors, definitely sided, he's like, I don't know what he was thinking, so, but those things happen. But pretty much every locker room I've been in has been okay. Some have been interesting where it's like, should I be here? Should I just pick up my bags and walk out?
Right.
You
I
know, there
had I
there
had
was
one of
one,
those. Oh, go ahead.
no, no, and then I want to hear your story, but like there's one instance I had a booking here in Pennsylvania, and I get to the town, I get to the locker room, I'm watching, people set up and all this stuff, and I'm selling my merch at the table, and people are coming over and talking and stuff. So I go in the locker room, I sit down, put my bags down. A guy comes down, sits next to me, who the guy I thought was a fan because he's at my merch table asking me like fanboy questions. And he sits down next to me, and goes, "Man, you and JBL, huh?" And I was like, "Man, this guy's a worker." And he's coming in the locker room and he's asking me these, fanboy questions. I was 2 seconds from just picking up my bag, standing up, and walking out. And this was after the promotion. It was like, "Yeah, we're gonna have you go through a table." I was like, No, you're not." Yeah, I come in. I'm the comic relief. I come in. I lighten the mood. We have some fun. I might tickle you. I might do a little Three Stooges routine, and now we'll get the crowd dancing. We'll get the crowd cheering. And when I leave, then you could do all this. But they want me to go out there and do all this whole hardcore stuff because I was in ECW. I was like, "Did you watch ECW?
Right.
Show me how many hardcore things I did in ECW." And that was like one of the weirder shows where I was just like, I'm about 2 seconds from just picking up my bag and walking out. But to me, it's all about, giving the fans the stuff they were promised. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
I bit my tongue. I didn't say anything. I just went, "Oh yeah." I give him the Norm Macdonald laugh, and
Yeah.
got dressed, did the thing, got paid, and left. You know?
There's nothing, and it goes to show, like what you were talking about earlier, with these green guys. Shut your mouth, open your ears.
Yeah.
But and you're not there. You have to remember you're not there for the guys in the locker room. You're there to do a show for the people that have bought tickets with your face on the poster or whatever. So it's
Yeah.
about them. So I get it. I've only had one incident where I've actually picked something up in the locker room and thrown it at somebody because of something that they fucking said.
Yeah.
And we're doing a show, and I'm doing a hardcore match. And we finished doing I think it was me, and it might have been Bill Scullion
Oh, I know.
at the time, right? And we finished, and we go out there, and we had done these, a series of matches because up in Canada there was a time where nobody else they wouldn't do the hardcore matches for whatever reason because they didn't know how to do them.
Right.
You know as well as I do, there is a specific nuance to being able to do matches like that without actually just being backyard and smashing yourself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because you have to go out there and work the next day too. Like you got to do
Exactly.
this on a consecutive. I can remember a time that I was, working a tour, and on this tour, I'm doing barbed wire matches in every city that we would go to, and we never touched the barbed wire once in any of the fucking matches because you have to be able to go out there and perform.
Yeah.
So we're doing this match, and the two of us, we finish the match, and I go back into the locker room, and one of the vets, one of the older guys there is, who was brought down to do the show, face on the poster. And he looks at me, as I'm sitting there and just kind of decompressing from everything after a match. You just need a minute, just
Yeah.
let me decompress on everything, and then we can chat. All right, no problem. And he yells across the locker room, looks at me, goes, "Well, you guys just set the business back 25 years." And I was like, "Oh boy." I was like, "I'm sorry, what?" And he starts bipping, and I was like, "Brutus, I will beat your ass right here and now with your fucking Motley Crue fucking tights on, telling me I set the business back 25 years." And I pick up a chair and I launch it across the locker room at him.
All right.
And yes, when I say Brutus, it was beefcake. It was
Yeah.
the only time ever that I've ever been and it was one of these moments where it was like, okay, I know as a young guy in the business, I probably should have just kept my mouth shut. But at the end of the day, I'm still a grown ass man, and I literally just finished, you know,
Doing what you were booked to do.
to do. Yeah. That was the thing. And it was like, I couldn't believe it. And, you know, I apologized afterwards and we hashed it all out and stuff like that. But it was just one of those moments where it's like you let your emotions get the best of you.
Yeah.
Right.
In a lot of ways, I think that's where that whole CM Punk thing went wrong with
Right.
the
Well,
brawl out.
I was just gonna ask you about that, because this is one of those things where, you have a guy who's been in the business a very long time, and you have a guy who hasn't been in the business, but is more in the business on the immediate. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like Punk's been in the business for years and years and years, stepped away for a while. That doesn't take away from what he knows in his knowledge and his status or anything like that.
Right.
And then you've got a guy like, Jack Perry, who's very out there every week. He's
Mm-hmm.
very prominent with the people today and stuff like that, but that doesn't correlate to what happens behind the curtain.
Yeah.
Right. In your opinion, who do you think was wrong?
Uh, I'm when it comes to the whole situation, I'm Team Punk,
Right.
just for the fact that and then go a year before that with the brawl out situation where he wins the belt, he gets injured, and then they have him go right to do a press conference straight from the ring. Like you said, there's a moment after a match where you have to decompress.
Mm-hmm.
You have to sit there, let the adrenaline wear off, calm down, react to what you do. So, leading up to that, there was a whisper campaign that he was getting Cole Cabana fired from AEW, which Tony said wasn't true. And all these rumors were coming through wrestling media. So he goes and has this match. Oh, he's confronted in a ring for shoot by Hangman Page in the shoot promo by Hangman Page. Not knowing he was coming. Then he goes and has the match, wins the belt. I think he tore his tricep, and then he goes and does the media scrum. Comes right from the ring, right to the media scrum. Injured, hungry, tired, angry, and what's the first thing he sees when he sits down? He sees a room full of the media, of the people who were doing the rumors, spreading the rumors of him trying to get Cole Cabana fired. So of course he's going to be full of emotion,
Right.
and he's hungry, he's angry, he's tired, he's injured. Fuck it. If they would have brought him out, let him go to the locker room, get showered up, get cleaned up, come in, maybe in a half hour, 45 minutes, fed, showered, clean, off the adrenaline, he might come in and might have been a whole different situation.
Yeah.
Now, yeah, and then flash forward almost a year to the date. The thing with Jack Perry, he wanted to use real glass in the locker room, which, the office was like, no, we don't want you to use real glass. Punk gets to the building and they say, hey, can you talk to him and make it make sense? Punk says, hey, we don't use real glass. And he's right. You shouldn't use real glass. It's unpredictable. You don't work
Right.
with kids. You don't work kids, animals, or glass, So, and then, during the pay-per-view, Jack Perry puts his, does the spot on top of the car with the windshield, taps on it, looks in the camera, goes, real glass, cry me a river. To me, that's just a shot across the bow.
Yeah. Yeah.
And again, they did Punk no favors back booking those matches back to back. There's no buffer in between. Yeah, when the Rolling Stones go on tour, Mick and Keith don't see each other before they get on stage.
Right.
Mick's on one side of the stadium, Keith's on the other side of the stadium. When Van Halen was touring, the Van Halens were on one side of the stage. David Lee Roth was on the other side of the
Yeah.
one side of the building. You keep them apart.
The Eagles don't even travel together. I
Right.
remember, like, they don't stay in the same hotels. They don't ride. They've all got their individual buses, but that's not what people, you know what I mean? That's their time. That's their stuff. When they're out there performing, that's what everybody should be concerned with. But everybody
Right.
in this inside of this business, and I feel like it's one of the only businesses where everybody not in the business feels like they can be in the business. Do you think that's because it's been opened up so much? Like, you know what I mean? We've had no choice. And I say we, as performers and as professional wrestlers, we've had no choice but to kind of expose what we do to the trolls out there in the world, because they're just so adamant. And we get to the point where we're like, look, I'm going to peel this fucking curtain back just a little bit for you to see that you're wrong, right? In your assessment of what we do. Is that our own fault?
Oh, people go, oh, it's fake, and we're exposing the business. Well, I mean, you could go through time and look at, back to the 20s, 40s, 60s, where people kind of knew wrestling was a work. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
It's not about the wrestling being a work. It's about disguising how it's work. Yeah, it's disguising the trick. You could tell, people are more sophisticated. Everybody knows the wrestling business is a work, which surprised me when people still come up and go, hey, was that real? But that's a sign of a good worker. It's up to us. People go, kayfabe's dead. No, kayfabe ain't dead. There's a reason why 60,000 people travel from around the world to WrestleMania every year, because they want to see who wins and loses. Nobody knows who's winning and losing, and they don't know how, and they don't want to know how. But pro wrestling is probably one of the only businesses, and I mean, you can, it's opened up a little. It's been open because when you think back in the day, outlaw shows, pro wrestling is one of the only businesses where you can buy a ring and just call yourself a wrestler. I can't buy gear and walk down to Lincoln Financial Field and get a couple reps with the Philadelphia Eagles. That's not going to happen. But somehow in wrestling, somebody could show up and say they're a worker and get on the show.
Dude, I would be so fucking hard if I ever had the opportunity to do that, though. You know what I mean?
Yeah, full disclosure, me and Ted are Philadelphia Eagles fans.
Yes, full disclosure. Yes,
I'm playing to the judge here on this.
we are up against the clock, and I know that you are a very busy man. Ladies and gentlemen, we are joined by the Blue Meanie here. Always a pleasure to get to talk to you every single chance that I get to, especially on Sundays now that football season is back.
Go Birds.
But we are talking a little bit of wrestling here, and I have mine. Like, there's always a spot in a match. You always say there's international spots, and everybody knows about these things. And there's certain spots, because we talk about how we've kind of opened up the door a little bit, or pulled back the curtain. There's certain spots in wrestling that I personally can't fucking stand when I see them, but they seem to be, and it's for me, it's that 10 punch in the corner.
Right.
When you're standing up on there and you're like, come on, and 10 full on shots to the melon. Yeah. I hate it because of where we are in society, and MMA and all of this other stuff. I think, and I know that your trainer, Al Snow, has, gone on record many times saying the most fake thing that we do in professional wrestling is punch.
Yeah.
Right. You see guys trading punches back and forth in the center of the ring, and they're doing these strong style spots or whatever. And for me, it's always been that spot, that 10 punch. I stopped doing it. People would be like, oh, we can do the 10 punch in the corner. I said, cool. You want to do that? No problem. Here's how it's going to go. If I'm the baby face, if I'm up on top of you, I'm 6'4", 285 pounds. If I drop one shot on the top of your head, you're going to have a seat. What? I go, I'm going to hit you once, and you're going to sit in the corner. And I'm going to stand up there on the second rope and I'm going to look out like, well, I guess he couldn't take 10. Because to me, that seems like a much more realistic approach to that spot, right?
Mhm.
Is there a spot that whenever you see it inside of wrestling, it just makes you cringe just a little bit, going, oh man, I hate that spot so much?
It's the one spot I see it a lot, and it wouldn't annoy me if it didn't look so set up. But when there's a crowd of people on the ground and they're all huddled together and they're waiting for the guy to slowly climb to the top rope,
Right?
gain his balance, and meanwhile they're all kind of like, and then the guy jumps.
Yeah.
Whereas
Yeah.
if the guy would just, you know, once they're up, the timing should be the group of people are down, they all get to a knee, they all get to their feet, and as they're leaving that one knee to the feet, the guy's got to be going over the top rope right then and there.
Yeah.
You can't have them come to their feet and then you start climbing. You got to, it's all about timing, either do a springboard or, when they're down, start climbing. And when they get to that one knee, as they're getting to their feet, then dive. But you see them in a rugby scrum, going, where is he? Where is he? Oh, there he is. Okay,
Right.
let's scurry over here.
And eventually
Okay, here we go.
it looks like a fucking kumbaya circle. They're all like got their arms around each other's shoulders and they're all looking up. Everybody's looking up at this guy like, oh my God, what do we do? Like the visual of this person, like it's the second coming of Christ, and he's got everybody stunned into paralysis and nobody can move from where they, why not? If you've got that kind of time to watch the person, move out the way.
Yeah.
Don't let them hit you.
I've done the spot where, somebody, I'll be in a tag match and somebody will bump out. A guy will run, do a dive. That guy does a dive on those guys. And by the time it comes down to me, I get in the ring. I signal that I'm going to dive. I hit the opposite rope. And then by the time I get to the other ones, they all scatter. And I just stand there going, what the hell, man?
Exactly.
And heel comes in and cuts me off,
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Psychology.
Yes.
Psychology, right?
Who'd have thunk it?
It's crazy. It's crazy. I got one more question for you because
Sure.
I know, and then we're going to wrap this whole thing up. I know that you are and have done acting in the past.
Yes.
For some horror movies.
Yes.
Right. You big horror movie buff?
To a point.
Okay.
I know there's people who are deeper in it than I am. I enjoy horror movies, but I'm not a diehard.
What's your favorite genre?
My favorite. People will probably go, oh, poser. My favorite horror movie all time is Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors.
Is it because of the soundtrack?
Because
the fucking Dokken soundtrack.
I'm rocking with Dokken all day long, brother. But to me, that was like one of the better. It was right on the border of it was still scary, and they were starting to introduce a little bit of humor into it. It wasn't like that first Nightmare on Elm Street scared me to death. Like I was afraid to go to, you see his arms, growing, and you're like, oh my God. I made the mistake of watching it at like 2 a.m. in the morning with all the lights out, But Dream Warriors was right on that cusp where it was still scary, but there was they welcome to prime time, bitch,
Right. The corniness of the comic book scene where everybody looks like they're in an AHA video.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. So I get it. Awesome. You have any plans to do any acting in the future?
If it's right. I've been doing I've been involved with a lot of documentaries. I'm a huge documentary buff. Mm-hmm. Even if it's about paint drying, I can sit there and watch a documentary on paint drying. But maybe down the line. I don't know. It all depends on the schedule and and timing. The timing's key to everything. When I was doing those movies back in the day, it was just the right time to do them, and I had the time to do them. And there were a lot of fun. Shout out to Len Kabasinski out of Erie, Pennsylvania, who had me on a lot of his movies and gave me a chance to not only act but experiment with something new.
Now I know that I know that you are also a big comedian fan. And
Of course,
I know that you're a Carlin
he's
fanboy,
my number
like
one.
through and through. Always. I mean, he's top 5 for me as well. There's no doubt about it. His brilliance is unbelievable. Do you still listen to new comedians?
I try to as much as I can. You know,
Who you hot on right now?
Kyle Kinane's really good.
Okay.
He
Okay.
just released a new special on YouTube for free, and I forget what it's shocking something. But he's right up there with like uh like a sarcastic
Sure.
type of humor, and
I just
he's like
finished
he's a little bit punk rock, you know.
I just finished watching the second season of The Bear. If you've seen this or not, because
I need to. I want to.
dude,
I've
it's
heard about.
so good. We binged it.
Yeah.
We totally binged 2 seasons, and in the second season, there's an episode where they're at a Christmas dinner, and one of the guys who shows up at the Christmas dinner, who's kind of forced into giving the prayer for the Christmas dinner, is John Mulaney.
Oh,
And
nice.
it is one of the greatest Christmas dinner scenes I've ever seen in my life. And I think John Mulaney is absolutely hilarious.
Yeah.
So if you get a chance, please do go watch The Bear. You're going to fucking love it.
And you just remind me, Tom Segura is probably up there as one of my favorite comedians right now. Just from he still has that little bit of dark humor, which
Right.
you know, like Bare Naked Lady said, I'm the kind of guy who laughs at a funeral, you know, this kind of thing. But yeah. Yeah, he's got the right timing, he's got the right level of dark, but he's brilliant. He's brilliant, you know.
I love it. I love it. So thank you so much,
Well,
Brian,
thank
for
you.
joining us. I appreciate this more than you will ever know. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been the Blue Meanie, Brian Heffron. Where can people check you out? Where can they get in touch with you? Where can they send you love letters, dick pics, or anything?
Big fan of Dick Van Patten. If you would like to if you would like to follow the Blue Meanie, you can follow me on all forms of social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, kind of TikTok, at Blue Meanie BWO on all forms of social media. If you would like to support the Blue Meanie, go to presswrestlingtees.com/Blue Meanie. Buy yourself a snazzy little BWO shirt. I also have a podcast, Mind of the Meanie, the Mind of the Meanie podcast, which drops every Monday morning, wherever you get your favorite podcasts, or go to mindandmeanie.com. We talk about music, movies, sports, and tons of useless knowledge, kind of like this conversation right here, which is a lot of fun. Me and Adam Barnard, my co-host, have a lot of fun with that podcast. But that's all my vitals.
You mentioned TikTok, and I'm surprised that we haven't, and we need to start a campaign. I think that on TikTok, when all of the other dances are out there, there's no reason why the meanie dance should not be a trending thing on TikTok.
Yeah.
Hell, if we just got a second emergence with teenage dirtbag being used so much on TikTok, I think we start the trend. Ladies and gentlemen, send in those videos, get those videos happening, doing that meanie dance on TikTok. Let's get this thing back and revitalized and out there for everybody. Brian, thank you so much.
I want to see the best interpretations.
That would be fantastic. I would have all of it would fuck up our algorithm so badly.
Amazing.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Meanie. I appreciate you.
Thank you, brother.
Nothing but respect. We'll be right back to close this whole thing up.